Greetings, my brothers and sisters. Sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among the countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true first-hand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on This One Time on Psychedelics. Many of us find psychedelic medicines because we are looking for something more out of life. Whether it's curiosity, adventure, healing, or really anything else, the process of being able to stabilize these things in our lives after our ceremonies comes down to the concept of integration. However, I feel this topic is one spoke of often that I find, in many cases, many people are confused on what the actual process can look like and what some of the most important aspects of it are. This is why, for today's guest on the show, I wanted to have a man come onto the show who, along with being a dear brother of mine, is an expert at being able to help his clients integrate, heal trauma, reclaim safety in every fiber of their being, overcome chronic pain, and more, so that they can live the lives they know are possible for them. This is a very important episode to pay attention to, as so many of us either deal with chronic pain and or trauma ourselves, or have loved ones who do. And although plant medicines can assist in this, they are often not the full scope of the equation, and as such, I am beyond stoked to be able to welcome my man Bryan Raymond onto the show to share his personal story of moving through chronic pain, assisting his clients in doing the same, and helping to bring more joy to the lives of as many human beings as possible. Bryan Raymond, my man, I am super excited to have you here. This has been a long time coming, man. We got to meet at Training Camp for the Soul, both the program and then also the retreat as well. And you've really specialized in helping people find their center, helping people become regulated. And not only that, but what becomes available when you are regulated. And I talk a lot on the show about integration. Obviously, you guys know we talk about psychedelics a lot, but this is the most important aspect, in my opinion, of working with plant medicines is knowing how to regulate yourself, because we've talked on the show before about how a lot of people, if they're already dysregulated, they go to try to do more medicine and they just get more and more disintegrated and dysregulated. And so today, guys, I wanted to have Bryan on to talk about a lot of the things that maybe you've never heard about before with regards to things you can do to become more regulated. And then at the end, Bryan's got an amazing, amazing new program that I highly recommend, a new offer that for any of you guys that are looking to really master the ability to regulate your nervous system and be able to be your own guru. We're going to talk about that at the end. So, Bryan, I am super excited to have you here, man. How's your day going so far, brother?
Oh, my goodness, Ryan, it is absolutely fabulous. I mean, how could I not have a good day hanging out with you? Like your energy, and it's just those words you choose. It's just so nice to be around that, the way you actually get to speak about things. You get to hear yourself a little different, like, all right, cool. Yeah, so I'm stoked, man. Yeah, it's been a long time coming. We've been, bouncing around, for a while, and it just feels like it's finally the time.
Yeah, dude, it's the perfect timing, and I'd love if you give some context, man. I know that, you're someone who enjoys cannabis and things like that, and we can get into that. But what I really want to put the focus on in this is how you got into, regulating your nervous system and all the stuff you're into, because you have a story of dealing with rheumatoid arthritis. A lot of people that are listening to the show, I imagine either struggle with chronic pain or have someone they love that struggles with chronic pain. And I imagine similar to your story, they've gone to doctors who have told them this is all you're going to have in life. This is it, right? And so I'd love if you give some context on what you were struggling with and challenged with regards to your own body, and then how you got into all the stuff that you're into now.
Wow, yeah, this sums up a lot. So I'm going to keep it really really brief here for a moment, Ryan, because we're talking like 28 years since I've been diagnosed. Diagnosed at a young age, at like 23, and just starting a business. So it was on a very nice trajectory of owning a house, having a business, doing things. Felt great. And then, I got diagnosed and was like, oh, yeah, you'll be in a wheelchair probably by the time you're 50. I turned 51 last year. I'm riding mountain bikes and traveling and been off medication for a little over 6 months now completely. So, yeah, there's been a journey through a bunch of things, through either doctors, then outside of medication, through massage work, energy work, all kinds of things. And then to finally, like, what is it now, 4 years ago? Yeah, coming up on 4 years ago, I finally found some things that actually spoke to my system and actually started to make an impact and really started to shift and transform my life.
Dude, I love that, man. And also, you look great for 51, guys. Like, I know that depending on when this comes out, you guys might only have the audio version. We will be putting the video version out. But Bryan is not only healthy as an ox and mountain biking and doing all these things, but he looks great for his age as well. And that's a big part, I imagine, of nervous system regulation, right? Like, those things that kind of weigh us down, they kind of pull things down into us, right? And you can see, like, people with chronic pain, my mom is one of them, like, they get very like hunched over, right? And a lot of times they have very bad posture and things like that. And so to see you, I've got to spend time in person with Bryan as well. So lively, so excited, and being able to really be the example of what it looks like to be able to not only deal with chronic pain, but be able to move through it and actually see it as happening for you. Because in a way, it led you to all these amazing things that now you get to teach other people, and I think that's the coolest thing ever, man.
Right. There's so many facets to that, Ryan. Chronic pain, if we look at, just to sum up, like, physical tissue is the slowest responding tissue, right? We can change our minds in a moment. We can change our thoughts instantaneously, right? We can change how we feel in a heartbeat. Changing your physical form takes time. So when you see somebody with chronic pain and they're hunched over and they've been hurting for a while. They've had an interior pain. They've had struggles going on that they've been dealing with long before that showed up.
Yeah.
And that was the case for me. So it was really like my journey going from having support that tended really to the physical, right? Which was doctors, medication, go do stretches, yoga. There's a lot of physical, there's nutrition that supports the physical, which is all great. And that was all great at managing. There wasn't anything that was really starting to speak to the person having the experience, the person that was waking up in pain, where it takes everything they have just to pull themselves out of bed and face the day and feel like they're carrying weight through the entire day. And everything's just adding, and there is no break from it. You just eventually get used to it. Yeah, that's one of the scarier things for those people. And so when I found something that really started to speak to the nervous system, right? The thing that actually processes our experience, everything we get to do is through this nervous system. And one of the things that really made the dent for me was realizing that I was in survival mode all the time with chronic pain, and didn't matter what was going on. Nothing was speaking to getting me to feel safe or to regulate and to come down and to calm my nervous system down out of that mode. And if you are in survival mode, you can't heal. All the science, all the woo-woo, it doesn't matter what side or approach you want to take with this. If you don't feel safe, you cannot heal.
Yeah. Yeah, they're almost oxymorons of each other, or like antitheses of each other, right? Like, if you're in survival mode, your body literally thinks, like, pretty much that there's a tiger nearby, essentially, and the only thing it's focused on is getting away from danger. But when you're trying to get away from danger or pain, it's hard to run towards pleasure or run towards what you want, or even have a vision for what you're looking for in life. And so I love that you allowed us to really hear that aspect of the journey, because I have so many people that come to me that are just at a point where they're like, yep, this is all there is for me. My mom is one of them, and I love her to death, and she grew up in a different era, and really trusted the guy in the white lab coat. And I'm not here to diss Western Med or anything like that. It has its place. But I think there's so many people where it just falls short. Again, medications, things like that, all they really do is kick the can down the road. And, you experience some of that as well, and so I'd really love if you could get into a little bit of that, of like, kind of like what the turning point was for you. Like, what was the first thing you found that was like, oh, okay, this is really interesting. Like, what was the first nervous system regulation tool, I'll call it, that maybe you tapped into, that you noticed like, oh, this is different. Something's different here. Hey, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the show. I wanted to take a quick moment to let you all know that the doors are officially open for the Conscious Cannabis Collective. And as such, this is the last week you can sign up and receive all of the bonuses we're currently including. This is the last time I will be personally onboarding those of you who sign up with a complimentary one-on-one session, and you'll have the ability to get the Grow with Cannabis course for free during this limited time. For more info on how you can take advantage of this offer, head down to the show notes for this episode and secure your spot today, as we only have so many spots left and they are filling up quickly. Now back to the show.
Yeah, and I'll speak to something you said just before, which is like having that can kick down the road and people getting to that point of, and I don't believe it's even your mom being in a different time. There are still so many forums and boards I see with rheumatoid arthritis and people in chronic pain where that is, I've just learned to deal with it. This is what it is. And that's some form of acceptance when it's really resignation.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good to say that. Nobody says that with the form of like, oh, I've accepted this. This feels like, and it's not going to feel good, but it comes, I imagine with most people, if they said that, like, this is the way it is, there is no choice, because nobody's telling them they have any choice. It's, I was incurable, we'll manage, good luck. And again, nobody checks in on how you're doing. They ask how you feel, but they don't really check in on the emotional component of the nervous system regulation. So one of the first things that really, I think, spoke to me, and I consider myself lucky because I was in such a place that I was desperate for change. I had tried everything. So when something comes along, it's easy to be like, yes, please, I'll try that. I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
And there were many years that I wasn't that desperate. So it was easy to stay in that place thinking I could manage it on my own. And that was good and very limiting at the time. So when I got somebody that actually, one, I got support that showed me what acceptance really was, because I didn't know what it looked like for myself. I'm actually even getting a little choked up on this, just remembering those times when I actually first found my mentor and not, and coming to her call, a free call, and having somebody that actually just held a space for everybody that was on there to be themselves and where they were at. And it really say, yeah, I can feel this coming up. It's great. But yeah, it was really that form of one of the first times I felt like, oh, and then letting myself be held in that. And in that, she did some exercises that were called priming safety that I carry to me this day. I carry through with all my clients. And it is that slowing things down, a few different styles of breath work, connecting to felt sensations, allowing yourself to come into that slowness, which is really, when you're in survival and chaos, that can be one of the scariest things, is actually slow it down.
Dude, I feel that, man. Like, I've been someone who also, right? Like my buddy, Phil, who's our community manager in the CCC, he was telling me about a book he was reading. I forget the name of it, but he was talking about the 4 types of addiction. And one of them is addiction to intensity. And I was like, yikes, I feel attacked, right? Because most of my life, I've gone towards what is intense. And it's because for a long time, I was dealing with chronic neck tension. I was dealing with chronic headaches, which you want to talk intensity, dude. Like, you have a headache every day. I mean, again, I don't ever like to compare chronic pain and try to say it's worse or better or whatever. But when you're dealing with a headache that will not go away, it makes you so short-tempered. It really takes over your life in a certain way. And rheumatoid arthritis is very similar. My mom and dad both have rheumatoid arthritis. So I've got a really up close and personal look at what that does. My dad, for years, was going to get Remicade treatments. And then it came out, oh, that causes cancer. And he actually passed from cancer. That wasn't the only thing he did that would probably give him cancer. But again, I remember him going there and like sitting there for hours getting this Remicade treatment, coming home and being completely exhausted. And I just, like you were saying, it's survival mode, and the idea in life is not to merely survive, but to be able to thrive, and I imagine that's what you felt that first time you got to meet Anat and you went through that priming safety exercise, or those exercises, is that ability to be like, wow, thriving is possible. Would you agree that's kind of what you felt in that moment?
There was I'm glad you bring up your headache, because people, if, they hear rheumatoid arthritis, like, I don't have that. And it's like, carrying around any kind of weight of pain like that, a headache every day, when you've adjusted and started to have something show up so much that it starts to adjust your life and takes up that energy and space, and however small, if it's 10, 20, 30% in places where you have like rheumatoid arthritis or, constant migraines, and you feel like you're at 70, 80% in pain all the time, and you've adjusted to it, you actually get so skewed far away from like what center and open and grounded really was, that, your day that you come home and you can take a few breaths and things aren't beating on you for a moment, you're like, whoo, I feel great. But it's like, yeah, you're still at a 9 out of a 10. You just went down a tiny bit, but you've never seen 5 or 3 or 2 in how many years? And so having something that started to, going back to what you're saying, like having that with a knot, what speaks to me and what speaks to a lot of clients that I deal with is, I just want to not hurt. I just want some ease. I want some space. I want to just there's this like constant pressure that you're living in this bubble. Like, you feel trapped because energy is always drained. You're aware of it. And I love medication. When I finally found something that worked, it made a huge difference in my life.
Of course.
And then it made it possible for me to see regulation and what else was possible. So instead of just managing with medication, it was like, okay, Now that we're not fighting so much, what is possible out here? And that's when finding mentors that started combining things and showing me how to hold, not only be held in that, but then started taking that into holding it myself and starting to feel like,
Mm,
oh, look, as I started to slow down, as you're getting more comfortable, a lot of the pressure and weight just started to go away. There was less
mm,
to carry. There was more space to have that thing that I think a lot of people look for is like, I just want it to be natural. I just want to have myself feel like me again. And I'd like to not require effort.
mm.
And so when that started to shift, even the tiniest little windows of that were encouraging. And then I started to find some real tools. I started getting my foot and slowing down a little bit. Then tools like TRE, tension and trauma releasing exercises showed up. Then deeper forms of breath work showed up and other nervous system regulation, proprioception work.
Mm.
So we started learning more about patterns and protectors and really what was helping me start to identify like all the ways I was going into overwhelm. So not only getting to the point of, oh, look, I can get myself out of overwhelm and start to regulate myself. But now I can actually start to recalibrate to when I was coming into overwhelm. I actually got so reconnected to center after a while that it was like, oh, this is what it feels like to be here. Now I can actually feel when I start to go into pain or when things start to come up. And I was able to actually start to uncover deeper layers to start to dive into those through the regulation that started opening up all kinds of things that I've been carrying around since before I was diagnosed that started changing my physical health. And so,
Mm.
will I say cure? No. Will I say, but I love the fact that even, let's get beyond the conversation of whether you're going to be cured, healed, or what it is. Your experience in your life can be transformed. I don't care what your diagnosis is. I don't care what they say it can be. How do you want to feel in your life? Are you satisfied? And if you're not, then don't settle.
Exactly. Dude, it's so important. I'm glad you're bringing that up. I had the opportunity to speak to a gentleman yesterday named Ian, who I just gave a full scholarship into the CCC because the guy has such an amazing story. He, last Memorial Day, he had a massive stroke. He's 40. So he had a massive stroke and he had actually connected with cannabis right before the stroke. It wasn't what had triggered the stroke, but because of that, he let the EMTs know, like, or his wife did, that he had connected with cannabis. They labeled him a drug addict, were convinced he had done heroin or fentanyl or something, didn't give him the proper care. And so because of that, he ended up really messed up when he came out of it. He was paralyzed. He didn't know how to talk, etc. And, the doctors told him, like, this is all you're going to have. You're basically going to be in this state forever. But he was like, no way. I don't believe that. And so he came back and literally at this point, like 9 months later, he's basically a regular human again. I mean, he can't like do certain things, but you would never be able to tell in looking at him. And how he got there was breath work, was nervous system regulation, was a lot of the very similar stuff to what Anat does in Training Camp for the Soul, right? Inner child healing, these kind of things, safety exercises, all these different types of things that allowed him to go, no, I'm not going to take that as my answer. And I think that it's so important that someone have that fight in them, that fire in them to go, hey, you know what? I know more is possible. I might not know where it's coming from. I might not know what it looks like, but I know more is possible. Because if we put that out into the universe, just like you did, eventually you will find the teacher that you're looking for, like you found in the knot, and it's just amazing to be able to articulate that because I know that so many people in the world are stuck at that level where they're starting to surrender and to say, okay, I guess this is the best I get. And that's one of my favorite parts about doing this show and everything I do is being able to show people like, hey, I've dealt with chronic pain and moved through it. Very similar to you, right? Training Camp for the Soul was a big turning point for me. That was a big turning point. I started to release a lot of trauma around my father passing away. That's where I learned about TRE. It was so beautiful to be able to do that, especially with you too. I mean, it was such an incredible time in Estes Park in Colorado. And it's just amazing to see more and more examples of people saying, hey, you know what? I see this as an opportunity. And now I'm going to choose to find the lesson within it, just like you did. It's really amazing, man.
Thank you. Yeah, it circles back to where I wanted to, you said something earlier about being at that side. And it is amazing to be, and it still unfolds for me because like I said, I sat down medication this last year. Before that, I was on and off of it, experimenting, really wanting to be off medication. Never really wanted to be on it in the first place.
Yeah.
Right? Too many side effects, too many other things. And yeah, so, and there is that point that it keeps unfolding for me. Like there is actual gratitude for my journey and for rheumatoid arthritis. Because you're right. I was on a great path beforehand thinking I had a business, I had a house, things were looking great. That business is actually still open today. It's turning 30 this year. So,
Dude,
left
congrats,
left
bro.
a
I
mark
remember you telling me
there. What was that?
about that. I said, I remember you telling me
Yeah,
about that
yeah,
at training camp. That's
yeah,
your piercing business, right?
yeah. So I've always been passionate about people having their freedom of expression and not being held back by outside forces, whether that be just
Yeah.
culture or I think it's amazing, like you said, doctors, they just like, this is what's going to happen to you. This is what's possible. And it's like, can we just have a shift in that language? Like, this is typically what we see is a very far cry from you will never have this again,
Yeah.
and that is
100%.
such the thing because you get so many people that are just, they're buying that story, especially chronic pain, because they're told there's nothing that can be done. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. And I know that journey because I went through 20 plus years of in and out, like over 10 years of off medication because things weren't working and wanted to try a different way. So I've been through a lot of exposure, a lot of things to come to that voice that's still like against all odds and against all the things that have not shown up. Like I'm not ready to settle for this. So if
Mm,
you do have that, it's important to listen to it because that's an innate wisdom, I believe. That is something beyond yourself, knowing that no, this you don't have to be stuck here. So just even having the conversations, and you brought up something else which really struck me, which is safety. And it's a woo-woo word, right? A lot of people are like, oh, safety, the safety.
yeah.
So yeah, the way I've been explaining this and the way I like to deal with my clients is we already covered you can't heal unless you feel safe. Like an animal in the wild doesn't go back to resting, repairing, or restoring. A lot of R's in there. Until it gets out, until it gets
Ours are
away,
amazing.
right? And we're the same, although we don't have perhaps that jungle mentality or being chased. You're still at a computer, perhaps hunched over with your shoulders up around your ears, your tail tucked. Your nervous system's like, yeah, this is danger, right? All body cues tuned into a screen, starting to narrow that focus down for long periods of time, being hyper focused like a predator or prey. Your nervous system is
Mhm.
being told there are threats, and so we also get the idea that hold it together. Keep all your stuff together. Don't shake. Don't tremor. Tremors are a sign of weakness or some sign of illness or disease. What's wrong with you? Why are you shaking?
Mhm.
And so with all of that, it's just amazing to think that safety has to happen. And in order to come out of that, you have to downregulation is a process of finding safety again. So as much as a woo word it is, that's honestly what I believe is one of the biggest components that most people are missing, most practices, is that they're not making it, there's not a sense of safety to land in their experience.
Definitely. Yeah, I totally agree, man. It's like, especially like, again, we talk about psychedelics, we talk about caffeine, whatever it is, right? Like most people, including myself, I am one of these people, are completely unaware or were completely unaware until a certain point of just how much they had stabilized and normalized a very excited nervous system. And again, like our nervous system is meant to get excited every once in a while, right? If there is a real danger, yeah, there's real reason and utility to get stressed out or release adrenaline or cortisol or these kind of things. But what happens when the modern day tiger is a coworker you work next to that you don't like, or a traffic jam that you get into every morning, or, a mother-in-law or father-in-law that, judges your parenting, right? Like what happens when those things never go away, right? Like, and that's where I think a lot of people get maybe confused between nervous system regulation. It's like, guys, it's not a bad thing to be upregulated when you need to be upregulated. Like you get in a car accident and they're like, there's a tornado coming. Like, yeah, that's a time to be upregulated. Like get the hell out of there, right? But, in the modern day, the stressors are almost never leaving, not to mention money, bills, societal standards, all that kind of stuff. And so again, rather than saying, oh, the world's just messed up these days, and things like that, why don't we actually go to a point where we can actually say, okay, you know what? Like, how can we choose to live in the world today and have our cake and eat it too? And make sure that cake is gluten free, of course, And so like those abilities to be able to regulate your nervous system and be able to learn how to do that for yourself and in the way be your own guru, allow you to be able to usher in the beauty that is all around you, just waiting for your nervous system to stabilize into it.
Yeah, really well said, man. Because you notice we're saying regulation, not down regulation. You
Yeah.
you can need to upregulate, you can need to downregulate. And again, the key of healing in any sense of journey is not to even out life. It is not to even out the seas. It is to make it so you can ride the waves and actually experience the fullness of what life has to be. Because life is going to bring you unexpected. It's going to bring you challenge. It's going to knock you down, and it's going to cause you to grow by some uncomfortable circumstances at times. And can you be with that? How can you ride those waves? How can you notice when you get swept away? Can you pull yourself back to center when you need to? Can you actually stay present, which allows you the freedom to stay engaged and open and in communication with the people that you're around? It allows you to keep your thoughts going and allows you to stay connected to a situation rather than being swept away.
Dude, 100%. And that's the thing, right? It's a juxtaposition in a way. I just love that word. So every time I get a chance to throw it out, I will. It's the 5-year-old in me. But like, again, it's that juxtaposition between where are you oriented within yourself? Like, are you like kind of like in the shit, right? Like, are you just hearing all the metaphorical voices and parts just yelling and you kind of get like lost of who you are? Or are you able to find that safety and go, wow, man, it looks like I have a lot of stuff going on inside of me today. Maybe, you know what, I need to meditate a little bit longer today. Maybe today I need to take some stuff off my calendar, because you're oriented into the observer point of view, which allows you to actually be able to, figure out what's going on inside of you and choose the right, quote unquote, medicine for yourself. But when you're just stuck in pain and stuck in these things and you're telling yourself that you are stuck and that's the story you're telling yourself, it's really hard to find that reorientation to the real you, right? Like the observer within all of it, the father figure within the metaphorical dinner table analogy,
You opened up a big conversation that I love right here, which is something that people with chronic pain will get, and I imagine a lot of other people will not. This will be one of those experiences, and this speaks to why people with chronic pain, especially when it, like, I say chronic because that means it's been there a while. It's not a pain you've woken up with, like, oh, I have a little bit of pain, cool, I'm back to normal. It comes and goes. When you wake up and part of your energy is drained every day because this thing is there, like your headaches, like my rheumatoid arthritis, and it gets to feel at points, it's very isolating and very alone, because other people can't relate to a deep-seated, like, internal bone hurting. It's not explainable. Like, you couldn't ask me to explain how my arthritis what would be to you.
And so having something where you can start to regulate again and actually start to open up, right, can make a huge difference in your world. And actually start to speak to that. And you had a different part of that question in there that I wanted to speak to, but I got lost in my thought on that first part.
No, dude, you're totally good, because you brought up something really good there. Like, there is, how do I even put this? Because I know exactly what you're talking about, because I've been there with my headaches. Like, I remember asking my friends, especially with the neck tension, because that was the first thing I got. I got a lot of front neck tension. It was about 2 years after my father died. And I remember I was an exercise addict. That's really what I was at that point. And I was using exercise as therapy. And so every day I would wake up and I would say, okay, you know what? My body's really tight today. My traps would be really tight. My neck, back of my neck would be really tight. And I would tell myself, all right, Ryan, you got to take it easy today. You just got to like give yourself some time to rest. And then I would start foam rolling and stretching. And then I would convince myself, you know what? Like, my shoulders feel okay. I could work those out. And I remember that when I did a legs and back day, pull-ups and squats, and the next day I woke up and I had insane tension all throughout here. I could feel all my throat muscles working. It was like very eerie. It's almost like thinking into autonomic functions, just like a very strange thing that's almost like it shouldn't happen. Like, it's just one of those things that like is just very strange. So I remember that I started asking my friends, like, hey, like, do you have tension at all in your neck? And they'd be like, no. And I'm like, oh God. And every time I would hear that, because I'd be trying to get them to go, yeah, every once in a while I have it, so I could normalize it for myself more. And so there's this thing where like it starts making you close off more and more, because you start not being able to feel like you can relate to the people around you, even if that's not actually true, because everyone's fighting a battle unseen. But at the end of the day, I know exactly what you're talking when it comes to opening up. So when you start to establish safety, which there's a reason it's on the bottom of the pyramid in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it is the foundation for everything. You can't have anything positive happen in life if you're not feeling safe, because even if it does happen, even if something positive does happen, you'll be too panicked to actually realize how positive it is, And so when you start to establish that safety, it allows you to open up more and connect, and not need to, in my case anyway, necessarily find evidence of other people that have the same pain, but be able to relate to someone who maybe had a parent pass away and they're just really emotionally hurt over it, right? Like, you can relate pain to different areas than just the one that you are dealing with, So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, great point, Ryan. And that brings me to where I was going with that, which is when you've dealt with that for long enough and you've felt removed, And that pain starts to become a major thing where you're rearranging your day, or you're starting to plan out things, and you need routines in order to create safety. Where I had to learn how to eat with other hands. I had to learn to wash in different ways. I had to learn how to sleep with propped up in certain positions. So I was constantly challenged with how to show up in different things. Things weren't easy. Nothing was easy. And when that happens, and this is what the part of the thing that I really love, because you start to see this connection of like, what do you want? You ask somebody that's been in chronic pain for a long time, and I bet you their answer is going to be, I just want it I just want a break. I just want some ease. I just want some space. You could pry and ask and rearrange that question 12 different ways, and they're not going to give you anything other than, please just make this stop for a bit. I would love for just things to not be this way for a bit. And what that speaks to is that disconnection from your heart. Chronic pain will disconnect you from your heart to the point that you don't even know what you want, because thinking beyond not hurting anymore is the only thing that you can actually even really make space for. And so to get to that level of disconnection, and then they don't even want to really speak into how, like, we've learned to just manage it so well that we can't even remember like what, like the imagination of what would be like if you woke up in the morning, you didn't hurt, and you were able to show up and go, oh, I'd be able to do the exercises, the creative outlets. I would be able to express myself the way I would like to. Like, those all get tucked away, right? That creation, that desire starts to get tucked away, because the answer is always no. Because can I go do this? The answer is no. I don't know if I can. Hey, you want to come out and hang out with us tonight? Ugh, standing out on hard concrete floors all night around a bunch. Ugh, I don't know how that's going to affect my body. What am I going to pay a price? Okay, so I can't make plans down the future. I can't go and travel. I have to have kind of my security of my routine, my familiar environment to make sure I'm comfy, to manage. And so that is like, so it's one of the most revealing and like heartbreaking things that I've seen, is like we get so far away, and I know that feeling of like, I just don't want to hurt. And so to regulate and to move through a side, like I'm seeing with a couple clients right now, that they're actually, hey, we need to talk about my goals, because all I wanted to do was take a break and I wanted some space. And actually I have to really think about what I want now. I have wants, I have needs, I have something I want. And so we start to see that expression, and that's where we start to see the other work that starts to shine. But that first step is often just so missed, right? Let's dive into it through talk therapy and dive in and talk about your problems. Let's go take you back to your trauma. And there's a way of being with your trauma, and there's a sense of like, just too many ways of being with that. Without safety, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I'm glad you brought that up too, because you know how many people told me, dude, just go online and look up some visualizations, and hey, go on there and goal set. And like, none of those are bad pieces.
But they're gaslighting
wisdom, right?
yourself.
Like, those things matter. But exactly. Because if you don't have the safety within you, if you don't have the ability to actually know who you are, what your heart is, etc., then like all those things are just going to, once again, like probably stress you out. I mean, they stressed me out, because I'd be listening to them and going, why don't these work for me? Why do I feel so disconnected from them?
Well, you're trying to get to integration, right? You're trying to be the thing that you want to be, and you're ignoring how you actually feel.
Exactly.
Everything's going to be okay. You know what? I don't feel that everything's going to be okay. And telling me to say that 18 times and try to feel it, when the energetic signature, the heart is like, I don't feel like everything's going to be okay. I feel like everything is wrong. I feel hurt. I feel betrayed. I feel, whatever it is, but getting really with that connection of actually your authenticity, that's how you feel. And when you get to be with that and actually admit that and accept that, that's the thing that you're not accepting when it's, oh, it's just the way it is. No, you're scared to be with the way it is. That's why that statement is there. It's protecting you from it. Let's get some safety. And then you can, like, what is there? Like, oh, I was hurt. Can you be with that hurt? And Harvard has shown, if you're with an emotion fully, it can be fully felt and move through in 90 seconds. They don't always go that quick, but they can. And so can you make room for that and actually start to accept yourself in that level? And that's what safety provides, is that openness to start to bring more acceptance to you. And imagine that going into the world, being more accepting of yourself, needing less acceptance out in the world.
Yeah.
Right? How many people get compliments so they can't receive them because they don't even think that well about themselves?
It took me a long time to be able to say thank you. Like, that's a real thing. It's a very awkward feeling, and I didn't have any context for any of this, because, I always joke that the fact that white bread is on the food pyramid shows us how far away we are from every facet of what true health, true thriving, true ability to live out your highest and greatest destiny truly is. I use that microcosm of the food industry to allow me to see the totality of the macrocosm that is life. And when it comes to chronic pain, you're 100% right. Like my mom is very similar. And I was very similar too, just like, oh, this is the way it is. I guess I'm just going to have to, try to drink as much caffeine as possible to get the headache to go away. And then it doesn't. Then I get a worse headache, because now I'm dehydrated. So it was a very interesting time for me. And, it's interesting too, because I remember when it first started, I woke up one day and had like a grade 5 headache. It was never migraine level. I would get there every once in a while, but it wasn't like that every day. It was just annoying enough to make me focus on it constantly. And where attention goes, energy flows. And I remember I heard this guy, Gary Crozier, on Paul Chek's podcast. And this was one of the turning points for me. This was probably in 2018, about a year after this started happening, maybe 2019, right around there. I remember I was trimming cannabis. So it must have been, at least a couple of years ago. But basically what happened was he was talking about how he dealt his whole life with insane chronic pain. Like he had to have total facial reconstructive surgery. I forget why, but he had one leg that was insanely longer than the other. Like it wasn't a discrepancy. It was like, like very much longer than the other one. Crazy hip problems, just you name it. He had a lot of it. He was telling the story about how he realized one day after working with a practitioner that he was unconsciously waking up each day and going to look for the pain. Like, where do I hurt? Is the pain there? And what he realized was in doing that, yeah, of course the pain's going to show up. So what he started doing after he was able to establish some safety was to, when he woke up, he would pattern interrupt himself and go, what feels good in my body right now? And some days he was like, dude, some days it was just one toe. So I would focus on that toe. My big toe feels so good. Look at the mobility it has, et cetera. Like I'm healing, et cetera. But he didn't bypass the part of like, this fucking sucks. And I'm really pissed off that my body is failing me. Like he didn't bypass that part. He gave himself time to go through that part, just the same way that a child doesn't bypass their tantrum. Again, if you try to tell a child that it's not a big deal, they're not going to listen to you, at least if they're before 6 years old when they have an ego. They're going to go through that tantrum anyway. And eventually, they'll be tantrumed out. They might not get what they wanted, but eventually they're tantrumed out. But I think as adults, right, like we kind of forget that because societal standards, especially for men too, this is starting to change, but, we have to be strong pillars of society, and we have to lift heavy weight and all these things. And I can't even tell you, I mean, a lot of them too, a lot of the guys that are in chronic pain, but still trying to deadlift and PR and things like that. It's a whole nother rabbit hole we could go down. But, it's just very interesting to talk about these things because I remember when I was there, and every once in a while I'll get a headache again. It won't be like, from the same reason, but I'll get a headache and I'll feel those thoughts coming in like, oh my God, is this going to go away? And I'm like, oh, there are those parts of me that are really scared still. Let me give those parts some consoling. Let me give them some care and let them know like, hey, you know what? It's okay to feel that way. It's okay to get scared when a headache comes on because you're worried about what happened in the past. It's okay for that. And it's okay to recognize that, you know what? If that happened, we'd figure it out. We'll be okay. But we can also agree that, yeah, having a headache fucking sucks. Having rheumatoid arthritis fucking sucks. Like it's important to have both of those. It's a yes and.
Yeah, I love this because you're moving right through like just really a lot of pillars and the steps of my program and how I work with people, right? So we get to safety and down regulation. You got to make room. And in that process, we start to make more room for us, right? And the shift goes from out there to like what's going on for me in the safety. And now we're talking about acceptance, just a deeper level of acceptance. And in that, we start to see like, yeah, what is here for you? And we're moving into those layers of peeling the onion of acceptance. Like, where can you accept more of you and allow how your feelings to be here and to be valid? And you've already led into like how that starts to really peel away the next layer, which is like, can we start to uncover like in that acceptance, then we can actually start to see it for what it is and maybe get to the root and find out where you learn some of the things that you learned that are actually keeping this program alive and active. And if it's not supporting you, now we've actually made the room and the resources in the system to actually move that and actually have it felt and pulled. If you don't want that to be done, like, let's get that character off the stage and let's start like, what do you want? Who do you want to be? Right. And so we can start showing up for integration, reparenting, and actually move some of those deeper layers to start transforming and shifting the way you show up, which through all of this, what I find, I mean, it's amazing for everybody, but when you find chronic pain, this is such a profound thing because your body starts to change, your life starts to change. You start to experience a lot less rigidity. opposite side. So you experience a lot more freedom.
Yeah, man.
Right? You experience a lot more freedom. You experience a lot more ease. And the beautiful thing about that is it starts to come more effortlessly and naturally.
Yeah, 100%, man. That's exactly what I experienced too. I mean, I could have never dreamed of doing what I do now, being on calls a lot, doing podcasts, etc., if I was still plagued from daily headaches, but I would have never gotten past the daily headaches if I had just kept trying to go to the chiropractor, kept trying to go to acupuncture, kept trying to get massages. And again, those things can be great modalities. Like I just went to acupuncture today, but the important thing was to recognize that just as shamanism talks about, like first, when you get any injury, whether it's like breaking an elbow, whether it's trauma from a parent passing away, whether it's sexual trauma, whatever it is, it's a spiritual break first, a spiritual illness first. And then it trickles down into the mental body, the emotional body, and finally the physical body. And so like you were talking about at the beginning, a lot of the modalities, yeah, they're fantastic for the physical body, but that's kind of the wrong order, right? Or kind of just a different order than really how I've experienced being able to heal from these things, right? And like what you're talking about is being able to look at the you in the equation, the spirit, the soul, etc., and find out like what is that aspect moving through, right? Like what pain, what belief systems, these kind of things, right? And being able to get to that point where, yeah, then eventually it will manifest into the physical body into something that hurts much less. Like for me, I know that when my father passed away, there was a lot of, right after that was when I started to get, I wouldn't say full on OCD, but I would wash my car like 3 times a day. I would go on like 5 bike rides a day. I would work out 3 times a day, strength training, things like that. And I got very militant, and I didn't really have the awareness at that point of like kind of the through line between those two things. So eventually, my body stopped me by getting me the neck tension. It kept trying to give me signs of like, hey, you need to pay attention, right? Like you need to get clear.
You're trying to control the outside because you can't control the inside.
Exactly. And if you're trying to get the external world to fit the internal demands of yourself, oh man, that is a scary place to be, and it's a very powerless place to be because you really can't control what's happening in the external environment. And when you start to go back inward, you start to realize that in my case, I really just needed a lot of crying. A lot of anger came out first because sadness is always below anger. So like, I got into Muay Thai, I got into a lot of different things. When I started to understand, especially after training camp, when I started to get like, oh, okay, I am numbing myself out like crazy. All right, that's what's going on here. Okay, so I don't know what I'm numbing myself from, but I know I'm numbing myself. So first, let's start taking things away and subtracting, because I think that at least how I was raised, I imagine it's probably similar for your case and many people you work with too. When you start to have an issue, right, whether it's pain, whether it's, a sickness, etc., we've been trained to think, oh, we must need to add something. I must need to get a medication. I must need to go to an appointment and these kind of things, get something, right? And again, those things aren't necessarily bad, but when you're already overwhelmed, it's like putting cars into a metaphorical traffic jam, right? And expecting it to move faster. And I think for me, it was a re-education or a re-educating of myself into being able to subtract cars from that traffic jam so that the traffic was able to get less, constricted and be able to actually move. And when I was able to do that, it was really just a lot of emotion that came out, a lot of shaking, a lot of crying, a lot of anger, a lot of screaming. I remember at the training camp retreat, there was those times where we'd get put into breakout, not rooms, but breakout kind of like groups or whatever. And I remember watching people go through things. And before I went up to the hot seat, I remember thinking like, wow, man, like, holy shit, like, that's wild. I wish I could do that. I had this belief for so long that I couldn't cry, right? And my mom has the same belief. I watched her my whole life say, I can't cry, even though she would, but she would say, I can't cry. And so all of a sudden, once my dad passed away, I remember there would be times where I would feel emotion come up and I would tell myself like, okay, you got to let this out, but just not right now, right? And then eventually that stopped happening. And so I started to form a belief that I couldn't cry. And it wasn't until training camp where I was watching other people go through it. I was honestly jealous. I was like, man, dude, the ability to just like freak out like that, not freak out literally, but like, be able to scream and cry and whatever. I was so jealous of it. And then I get up there and I start going through it myself and I'm like, holy shit, man, like I can do this. And it was scary, man, because here we are in Estes Park. It was like, I don't know, a lot of snow outside. I remember the cars couldn't even get up the driveway to the place we were staying at. There was no distractions, no TV, etc. We were in class from like 7 a.m. till like 10 at night. It was, it was aggressive. And there was no cell phones. There was like no distractions. And so all I got to do was sit there with it and watch other people go through their process and have other people watch me go through my process. And that event really retrained me. I really see that as the catalyzing event that helped me see like, dude, this is so possible for you. And it was after that the headaches really started to lessen up. They really started to lessen up. I remember even when I went to training camp, I went there with a headache. We missed our flight because the flight ended up, they had something, they had to, delay it or something like that. And we ended up missing our connecting flight. So by the time we got there, everything was already starting. I was stressed out. I went to go make a coffee the second I got there, like it was just funny seeing the person I came in and then witnessing the person I left as like only 5 days later, what is that? Like 120 hours later, 124 hours later, totally different person. Just wild.
Amazing experiences. Absolutely. Those retreats are intensive and it's so nice to be removed and in your own little bubble. And it's just a very condensed version of your own space, right? Just making it a lot more accessible in a shorter period of time. But you speak into so many things in there that are just like we talked earlier about, like being able to start hearing your heart again. And in that you spoke to like being able to start hearing your intuition, starting to hear things like that can call you to make those spaces and starting to hear things that will, so you start to hear these voices and you start to, as you make that space, the other side is that you start to hear what you want, right? You started to get back to hearing like by showing up more for ourselves. And you've spoken to so many things. I could just keep picking them, right? But like, yeah, we're not trying in healing. You're not trying to change the past. You're not trying to change the event. Trauma is defined as any event that was too big for your system to handle at the time. You just didn't have the computing power and the capacity to handle the amount of information that was coming in and knew what to do with it. So your system figures out some way to mitigate, handle, rearrange or store it, but you still had the experience. So going back in and having the safety and having the ability to start looking at your own inner experience and it's such an interesting power shift, right? Because it's no longer trying to figure out life. It's no longer trying to make life fit into some boxes or some beliefs that this has to be the way. It allows you to start being the freedom to shaping yourself and getting clear on what you want and getting more, clarity and aligned and being able to speak into what it is that you really want in life and what is working for you, what's not working for you. Getting in that space really starts to give you a lot of power to transform your life because we're not trying to change the event. We're just trying to heal the reaction to it.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. We're just supporting the processing of that information, letting that system digest it, move through it, and let that experience finally move on.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. Instead of causing this rupture in the system.
I just realized in this moment, I was today years old, as they say, when I realized that, what the whole idea of soul retrieval that shamanism does is very similar, right? It's a spirit break, not that you're broken or anything like that, but very similar, right? Like an event happened that either you were too young to know how to handle, maybe you were already at like a 9 out of 10 and it just kind of like created a nervous system breakdown or something like that. And so there's a part of you that almost became fractured there. It's almost like a program got corrupted on the computer, right? It's not that the program was bad. It's not that we want to go try to fix the program, right? It's just that we got to figure out like, okay, how do we uncorrupt it so that the program can still be there, but we can actually process it and find the lessons, opportunities, and like the positive side of it. But if you try to go into it right away being like, oh, it's a positive, man, it's happening for you. That's such a gaslight, dude. And I choose to believe that life happens for me. But when I go through a process of being really pissed off or really angry, etc., I don't just tell myself it's going to be okay, man. It's all happening for you. Just, love and light. I don't do that. I'll go through my process. And then at the end, when I feel ready, I'm like, okay, all right, I know that happened for me because I really feel that at that point. I don't try to do it before that. And I think that's where a lot of the self-development, spiritual work, etc., can get kind of muddy. And that's why I highly recommend people work with you because again, if you look into really anything, even breath work, things like that, if you just try to go online and do breath work. Well, if you're doing holotropic breath work because you think that's a great thing, but you're already at a 9 out of 10, is that the best breath work for you? No. Does that mean it's bad breath work? No, it's just not the right medicine for what you need. And so what I love about what you do is you're able to actually meet people where they're at and be able to help them with whatever they need in that moment rather than them going on YouTube or something like that, where again, there are great videos on things like this. It's very similar with cannabis education, right? Like I talk all the time. People could go online and learn about cannabis, but typically it's not information they need more of. It's really being able to have someone that tells them or like allows someone to hear them say, I feel really shameful around this. I feel really guilty around it, and allow them to process that, And so when they're in your container and you're able to hold that for them, they're able to process that and find out what are the right modalities at the proper times to be able to get them back to that part of their lives that is able to thrive, like that's why I just love what you're doing so much, man. It's so needed in the world.
Appreciate that, Ryan. Yeah. And what you speak to is that process of co-regulation to self-regulation, right? And I get it. I'm all for people. I was there for probably 10 years in my journey. Like, I'll figure it out, because often what I see happens was my journey. Go to doctors, you get this thing, and, I'm going to turn to the people that are supposed to help, that are trained for this, right? They go to school, they do all these things. Yeah, but they don't really live with it. So they give you the medications, they go by the book, they pull out the little playbook, like, here's what we do, right? We check our boxes, and that's what they're supposed to do. And at some point, a lot of people get very frustrated with that, and then they decide, like, that's not working for me. I don't want to pay the price with all these side effects. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole of, whatever it is. And you go off on your own, and then you're disheartened because you're out there with a dysregulated nervous system in overwhelm, trying to figure it out from that place. And it's at some point, I wish that, you can find it. I got lucky, found my way through, but I figured lucky, or I found my person. I found the right support, right? I didn't figure it out on my own. I just finally found the person that was going to support me and meet me where I was at, like you just said. So it's a battle that everybody has to come to, but going it alone is just making it so much harder. Finding the right support is so much valuable. It changed my life. That was the pivot point, was finding finally the right support. And that right support meant they were going to get me on my feet to be on my feet on my own, not to be dependent on them or some medicine or anything else, but actually teaching me how to regulate myself, how to hold myself, all the things that you and I have talked about, and how to move through these layers. And that was transformative. That really put the power in my hands. And that's what I like to share with people. And that's where I believe healing and what we're seeing change with coaches now is, if you're finding good trauma-informed coaches that actually can meet you and actually help you sort your way through the tools, because there are up regulation, down regulation, when to move, when to stay, and getting that discernment back. There's a lot of extra support in just having somebody as an extra nervous system. I mean, we're mammals. Mammals are meant to, we have evolved to co-regulate. We need that community to help our nervous systems. When we get an overwhelm, we resource other people's grounded nervous system, good coach, to let them hold some of that so we can sort through our shit.
Yeah, 100%, man.
Right. And so it's just so much easier that way. It really is. And I love that people go on their own, but this is like self-empowerment going in on your own. Right? It's like getting the people in your corner to be your support team, not to be your caretakers.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. And what's really cool is one of my favorite quotes is, your mess becomes your mission. And so like, look at now the fact that you've been able to find the right mentors, be able to gain the skills. Now you're able to help people the same way that you were able to be helped. But if someone had told you that way back when you were in chronic pain, like, oh man, like this is going to be great for you. You're going to be able to help other people. You'd be like, fuck off, man. Like, I need to get out of pain. So there's a stepping stone process here, right? Like, again, all of these things are accurate, but again, it's not going to help to tell someone like, oh, this is going to be part of your mission if they're still in the throes of their challenge. But now you've been able to persevere, move through it, love yourself, establish safety, and now you're able to give that back to other people, man. And I just think that's so beautiful. And I'd love if you could get into a little bit of maybe when the next cohort starts in your program, maybe a little bit of what people can expect, things like that. Because I imagine some people might be like, whoa, I've never experienced anything like that. Like, what does that even look like? I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. I'm really excited about this because I have something new that I've been putting together. I've been working one-on-one with clients for a couple of years now, also working alongside my mentor at training camp and supporting the programs there, which are amazing programs for coaches, healers, and leaders. But what I'm really excited about, because what we've talked about, our process with safety, acceptance, and moving through all these deeper layers and making sure that we actually have something of a resource system. I'm putting together a new program that is going to be very intimate. It's like 3 people containers, very small, very personalized. And it's going to be a foundational program on back to your center, down regulating your nervous system or nervous system regulation, primarily, we're going to focus a lot on pattern recognition, personality patterns. We're going to have a bunch of different tools and practices, but we're really going to focus on something that was life-changing to me, which is TRE, tension and trauma releasing exercises, a way to let the nervous system do what it knows how to do. Like you've said, we've had all these things where we get in the wild, we get upregulated. It doesn't make sense to not have an automatic natural switch built in to downregulate. And we do. It's just we've forgotten how to use it. So TRE helps us tap back into that natural shake and that natural tremor, and which is amazing to let the nervous system start to process information and move itself into a state of calm and center again, allowing deeper layers of trauma to start processing. All without talking, all without having to dive into it. So it's a foundational piece because it's where I think everybody starts. It gets that system primed, and it really lets somebody either get their journey going, if they're curious about work and they're not really sure what to do, or if they've even been on their journey, they're already on medications or doing other things, this work really does interact and play well with so many other things that it actually starts to bring a unity to the system and to the experience rather than feeling like you have different parts and coaches and things going on. This starts to bring all of this together and allows you to ground and actually develop these tools in yourself. So you actually leave this program with tools that you actually can take for yourself and be empowered. And if you want to go deeper, then we start going deeper, because then the real stuff actually starts to show up and all the little stuff just is like fading off the back, right? Those days you can wake up and be like, sun's shining, like, oh, that little hiccup happened. Like I had traffic. Like, yeah, it's still a great day.
More time to listen to my audiobook, like, and that happens naturally, right? It's not like, fuck, I'm pissed, but okay, what's the positive way to think? Like, it's totally different, like, and it's just, it's so,
you catch yourself looking at it like, oh my God, that's how I would have reacted. Like, oh my God, I'm not doing that. This is so cool.
Yeah. I'll tell you a quick story of when this happened to me recently. I was at my mom's house, talk about a goody gumdrops moment, as Mark England would say. I got her a new boiler recently. And the day after we installed the new boiler, her basement flooded with 4 feet of water. No joke. We had to get the fire department to come to pump it out. It was a whole thing, right? It was an ordeal. So I'm leaving after that, right? Like the fire department came, it's getting pumped out. It came this close to the electrical panel in the house. And for all you audio listeners, it's about 3-4 inches. And so this is not the first time. This is the third time in my life this has happened, right? So the second time it happened, we cleared everything out of the basement. So luckily it wasn't like, a mold factory. It was all cement down there, but still really annoying. So, typically, I did go through a process of like, fuck, right? When she called me, I was actually on a call and for the CCC. And I get a text from my mom, hey, 3 feet of water in the basement. I'm like, yikes. So I run over there. I go through my process of like, okay, like panicking, like, let me get the fire department. Okay, cool. Figure it out. So once the pump's in there, I know we're good. The sump pump's working again. We're fine. I'm walking out to leave and I'm on my phone. So I'm looking down like this and I'm just walking, kind of with like a pep in my step. And I just walked directly into the back of my car, right? It was nighttime out, just smashed my whole body off the car. And I didn't have any time to react, nothing. I just started laughing hysterically. And I remember that moment going, whoa, that's like really different of a reaction, because typically if I've gone through something that upregulating, I would still be upregulated. But I realized in that moment, like that's when you'll typically realize it. It's like when those things happen that usually would have been triggers, like, wow, fucking this car, blah, like whatever. And now it's just like, oh my God, that's hilarious. You goofball, right? And I remember like it totally pattern interrupted me back into a super positive mood. And so like, I totally know what you're talking about when it comes to those kind of things where you just start realizing your ability to respond to life is just that, your ability to now respond rather than react. Even with the fire department, I wasn't freaking out. I was just like, okay, we need to get this done very fast. So it was like the perfect amount of upregulation to get the situation resolved. And then as soon as it was done, whoosh. And I've been off of all stimulants. Like I got off of all that about 6 months ago as part of my HTMA protocol. I wasn't doing a lot. I was having like 1 coffee a day and things like that. But I just, I have so much energy going through me already. Like this is me with no stimulants, bro. Like I don't need anything, like it's honestly kind of crazy when I do any stimulants. People can't get a word in edgewise, just gets kind of crazy. So now that I'm off of all that, that was my first experience of like, holy shit, man, that was a really stressful event. And I was able to handle that with as much grace and ease as I've ever been able to. So it's just really cool to be able to see these things in action and be able to experience the tangible results of doing this work.
Yeah, man, that is like, just to be able to like you become the surfer, not the wave, right? Like you can ride emotional waves, you can ride waves of life and actually go through bliss all the way to despair and grief and everything in between. And that's the point. There's a whole lot of polarity between those extremes, and that is what we are here for. Mm-hmm. And I'll give you a quick little story for that, because I think this is really, it was eye-opening for me. And it was a professor, and he was at a dinner party, and there was a lot of people. There was like huge party. And so they had this wine, and he asked everybody, or somebody asked him, describe the wine. All these adjectives, fruity, woodsy, nutty, like this, like all kinds of great like descriptions, right? The next question he asked was, tell me how you're feeling. 2 people answered the question only, and the answers were happy and sad. There is, you notice the difference in like the descriptions and how much more vibrant and how much more descriptive we can be describing wine. But when it comes to your interior landscape and actually how you feel, we've gotten limited to, I feel sad, I feel happy, I'm good, I'm fine. Mm-hmm. This sucks. And it's like, if you're trapped in that box, that's a good viewpoint or a good reminder or clue for me to start being like, I want more than that. I want more flexibility in my nervous system. I want more flexibility in my emotional system. And I want to be able to, the reason we don't have that is because at some point we've gotten exposed to something that felt unsafe, and our system instinctively trying to protect us likes to avoid those things in order to keep things safe. And unfortunately, we start living in a smaller and smaller bubble and a smaller and smaller world out of that. And we're reacting instead of going out, like you said, and actually responding and living. So having that ability to start opening that conversation back up for yourself is life-changing, right? We're talking like the essence of life when we go back to like what you were describing with shamanism, right? We're talking about truly coming in, and I'm not a woo-woo person, which is really funny. But to come back into that essence of what you hear people talk about, manifestation and creation, and I'll bypass all the woo-woo, like just create your life, but you get to that point of really getting clear on what values you have, what matters to you, and your clarity really gets to become clear when you have some posts like that, and you start to actually really get to know yourself, and you start to evolve with people, the relationships, the goals, and what you are about starts to get more in tune with that. Your life is being created for you to be happy. Right. You are creating. It's just that we've gotten into this, like try to get the outside to be somehow safe for us and wait for everything to be safe enough for us to feel good. And that's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. It's the classic, if this, then that.
Take that power back. Let's, right. Yeah. Let's just switch it.
Exactly.
So I love what you're doing. You're helping support that movement, brother.
Dude, likewise, bro. This has been so amazing, Bryan. I can't wait to have you back on, dude. I feel like we could riff for 3 more hours on this, man, but I want to make sure I give you the opportunity to let people know where they can find you, where they can connect with you. Of course, we'll put it in the show notes, but if you have the date of when your next cohort is starting, I don't know if you have the dates live yet, but give the people all that information, my man.
All right. New program is just, you guys heard about it first. So just getting started. So by the time this probably comes out, hit me up. It is going to be going strong. Beautiful. Really special program, great introduction on this foundation level, making it affordable, keeping it so it can be intimate. Find me at Instagram at being Bryan Raymond. You can email me, brian.blessedbe@gmail.com. Yeah, reach out. I'll start the conversation. Happy just to have conversations with people. I love changing that limit. Yeah, it's just like, you can't do this. Like, no, like that just doesn't work. If that's not your voice, then we shouldn't be listening to it.
Yeah, dude, I love that, man. And Bryan, I always end my podcasts with the same question, at least for any guest that's their first time on. I've had a lot of repeat guests that I don't ask the question to, but the question is this, man. Let's say someone listens to this conversation and they're really interested to check out nervous system regulation, maybe psychedelics, et cetera, all these things that can move them closer to being able to establish a really positive environment for themselves in their life. What is the one piece of advice you would allow them to give, or you would give them to allow them to use the proper discernment in figuring out, like, where am I in this process, right? Like, am I at a level where I can go right in the TRE? Am I at a level where I need to start right at the beginning? Like, what is the one piece of advice you would give someone that listens to this episode to kind of maybe illuminate potentially where they're at? I know it's going to be hard because you're not seeing them, but like, are there any certain things that you could tell them that could maybe give them a certain spotlight into maybe a certain direction they could go?
That's a very interesting question, right?
Guilty as charged, bro. I got a lot of them.
Because ideally, I mean, safety and nervous system regulation, I believe everybody is, I mean, that is a requirement. Yeah. That is something that is required of healing. It is a requirement in life to expand your possibilities and what you can be with. So stepping up to TRE, I believe that if you're out there and you're struggling and you're really just in the same spot and you find yourself being stuck and things aren't moving, find the proper support. Finding that proper support means feeling somebody that will meet you where you're at. Somebody can listen to you and figure out if things feel good and where they can go with you. If there's so many little nuances to everybody's journey. There's so many times that I've seen people that are surprisingly ready to go deep into their stuff and they didn't think they were. And they were very resourced, and other people that are very sure and very ready that need to slow down quite a bit. And that's so I don't know if there's a cut and dry answer for that. I think it's really finding somebody that can actually meet you where you're at to help you figure out where you are and what you need. And that way you can actually make a game plan for yourself, because healing is individualistic, right? That's why I meet all my clients where they're at. We create game plans specifically for them rather than just putting them through a group program.
Exactly. Dude, 100% agreed. You know, like I'll tell a small story about supplements to put this into context, at least in my life, right? Like supplements are one of those things we hear about that, you know, if you're in the realm of self-development or whatever, you start hearing about vitamin C, you start hearing about shilajit, sea moss, black cumin seed oil, B vitamins, right? And all of those things could be positive for you. And for years, I would just buy tons of different supplements. You know, I would get vitamin D in the winter because I thought I needed it. You know, I would just kind of guess. And you know what? Maybe they helped. I don't really know. But I was spending a lot of money and I didn't really know if it was helping. I would still have bloating and, you know, gut issues, things like that. And then I started working with my buddy, Jason Ganzuk. And Jason does a hair tissue mineral analysis protocol. I was dealing with like some GI issues, things like that. Now, this dude, what he will do is he actually tests you right on the mineral level, and he will prescribe certain supplements. I can't tell you, man, how much less money I spend, how much time I've saved, and how fucking awesome I feel. And so again, if someone listens to this, yeah, you can go on YouTube and look up these things, and you know what? Maybe they will help. Maybe they will. But my best advice, and something I do in every single category of my life, is if I'm looking to learn something, I want to go to someone who's already professional. Someone that can make a personalized game plan for me, because I want to start feeling better as soon as possible. I don't want it to take a long time. Could you figure it out on your own? Sure, right? You did. But again, it took you a long time, right? Why wouldn't you leverage someone who's already gone through 10 plus years of figuring this out and has created a system where you can hop into it and benefit and save 10 plus years? You know, I think that's extremely sound advice, man. So dude, couldn't have said it better myself.
You got it.
This has been amazing, man. And guys, I hope you all enjoyed this episode. I do not say it lightly when I say I believe this is one of the most important episodes I've ever done. You know, a lot of you guys hit me up about what psychedelic to do and, you know, what practitioner to go to. And you know what? All of that is great, guys. You know, I'm a huge psychedelic proponent, but this right here is the missing step. And I know that sometimes it can not seem as fun. It can seem a little more challenging, but I will tell you, out of all the psychedelic experiences I've had, none have felt better than the ones that have been paired with this type of information. And even the ones that I've done without psychedelics, where I've done this kind of stuff, that has really brought me back to a thriving state. And now when I connect with psychedelics, I'm able to get so much more out of them because I have that safety established that Bryan and I talked about. So make sure you give Bryan a follow. Make sure you reach out to him about this program. If you're feeling that yes from your heart, highly recommend you follow that. As always, guys, if you enjoyed the show, we'd love a 5-star review. Helps us get the podcast out to more and more people just like you, which we love. And wherever you guys are at in the world, I hope you're having the best day ever. As always, may the force be with you to infinity and beyond. Peace, everybody.